Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about the Grammys again, but we're going to be talking about Grammy Snubs. And what made me want to do this video is I came across a couple when I was researching for my Best New Artist Curse video. And then back when I did my first unpopular opinions video, someone had said that they wanted Beyonce to stop submitting their music to the Grammys. And initially I thought that it was just because they felt that she had too many Grammys. But the person who posted it and some of you guys actually informed me it was because Beyonce keeps getting snubbed. So I knew I had to look a little bit more into this topic. I'm going to focus on cases where one artist won the award over the other, not necessarily focusing on snubs in the sense of an artist just wasn't nominated at all when they likely should have been. For example, how The Weeknd's After Hours somehow went completely unnominated at the Grammys. And while, of course, whether someone was snubbed is a matter of opinion, I will be giving reasons as to why people felt that these artists were snubbed. And as we're going through these artists and these awards, make sure you're commenting along the way and letting me know whether you agree that they were snubbed or whether you think that the person who actually got the Grammy was justified in winning it. So let's go ahead and get started. And before we jump into the video, I do just want to quickly clarify that I'm focusing on more recent Grammy snubs, you could say. So all of the examples that I will mention do take place in the 2000s and onwards. So if you mention people like Mariah Carey or Michael Jackson, I'm well aware that those snubs did happen, but they won't be the focus of this video. At the 2005 Grammys, Genius Loves Company took home Album of the Year. The album was Ray Charles' last and was released posthumously as he passed in June of 2004. Genius Loves Company includes songs of several different genres like jazz, blues, and country. It also features guests including Gladys Knight, Natalie Cole, Bonnie Raitt, Elton John, and Willie Nelson. One of the album's singles, Here We Go Again, won Record of the Year. Genius Loves Company's Album of the Year win was considered a sentimental move and meant to honor Ray Charles' legacy. Aside from the album, his biopic had also come out the year prior in October of 2004. Kanye West's debut album, The College Dropout, was also up for Album of the Year. Kanye burst onto the scene with his braggadocious lyricism and experimental production style, which made creative use of a lot of samples. The College Dropout spawned hits like Through the Wire, Slow Jams, All Falls Down, and The New Workout Plan. The College Dropout is credited with starting the wave of more conscious rap that became more popular around the mid-2000s. In their album review, Today said, "The College Dropout stood out in the rap landscape because of its atypical prose. It avoided the usual plotlines about sex, money, and violence, and touched on everything from his faith to his fears of failure and other crises from his life. The album was proof Kanye was a formidable artist in his own right, rather than just working as a producer for other artists." Though The College Dropout lost Album of the Year, it did earn Kanye a Grammy for Best Rap Album. Jesus Walks was nominated for Song of the Year, though it lost to John Mayer's Daughters, which has also been considered a snub. Other than The College Dropout, Green Day's American Idiot was another strong contender for Album of the Year. The work was timely, and many of its listeners could relate to the disillusionment expressed in the album. American Idiot was released just a few years after 9/11 and in the midst of the Iraq War. Reviews called it angrily on point and praised the album for being mature pop punk rather than petulant and underdeveloped. In their review, Pitchfork said, "Though they do fling their share of surface insults, Green Day frequently look deeper here, not just railing against the political climate, but also striving to show how that climate has negatively impacted American culture. Ultimately, American Idiot screams at us to do something, anything, a wake-up call from those who once shared our apathy." Several consider American Idiot Green Day's best album and one of the best punk albums. It won the Grammy for Best Rock Album, but lost all of its other nominations, including Record of the Year, Best Rock Song, and of course, Album of the Year. With Graduation, Kanye continued to set himself apart in hip-hop. It produced hits like Heartless and Stronger, which helped usher in the more electronic sound in hip-hop. Graduation had several features including T-Pain, Chris Martin, and John Mayer. The album was critically acclaimed, with critics highlighting Kanye's ability to make so many different genres sound harmonious. His lyricism was as strong as ever, albeit a little more introspective and in some moments jaded with his fame. Graduation made several year-end lists and has been considered one of the best albums of the 2000s. Rolling Stone and NME both have it on their 500 best albums of all time lists. Still, Graduation fared no better this time around when it was nominated for Album of the Year. Amy Winehouse's album, Back to Black, was her second and last album. It's influenced by 1960s pop and soul, and Amy's sultry, melancholy voice sings about heartbreak, grief, and her tumultuous relationship. Back to Black is universally considered a masterpiece and is credited with popularizing British soul music in the 2000s. The album is also considered to have laid the groundwork for other British artists like Duffy, Adele, and Estelle. Though Amy didn't win Album of the Year, she won all 5 of her other nominations. Amy won Best New Artist, and Back to Black won Best Pop Vocal Album. The album's lead single, Rehab, won 3 Grammys: Song of the Year, Record of the Year, and Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. The album that beat Graduation and Back to Black was Herbie Hancock's River, the Jonie Letters. It had been 43 years since a jazz album won Album of the Year, and only the second time that it had happened. The album is a tribute album with covers of Joni Mitchell songs and features artists including Norah Jones, Tina Turner, Corinne Bailey Rae, and Leonard Cohen. The album was well received and considered a touching tribute. However, those frustrated with the win felt that it was unfair a cover album with so many features beat out works with original songs. In addition, both Graduation and Back to Black were successful albums well before their Grammy nominations. They were not only popular but also critically acclaimed and helped innovate music in their respective genres. After the Jonie Letters won, several critics criticized the Grammy voters for once again favoring older, more familiar music over more relevant music. In 2012, Nicki Minaj lost her Best New Artist nomination to Bon Iver. For those unfamiliar, Bon Iver is an indie folk band. They're best known for their song Skinny Love, which came from their debut album For Emma Forever Ago. It was Bon Iver's self-titled sophomore album that earned them their Best New Artist nomination. The album debuted at number 2 on the Hot 200, and Billboard named it the second best album of 2011, just behind Adele's 21. Bon Iver's album also took home the Grammy that year for Best Alternative Music Album. Ironically, both Nicki Minaj and Bon Iver were featured artists on Kanye West's song Monster. We all know how the story goes, that Nicki's verse was so good, Kanye considered removing it so she wouldn't outshine him. And that's just one example of how well Nicki was doing at the time. She said herself in that very verse that she was being offered up to $50,000 for features, all before her debut album even came out. Quickly, Nicki Minaj managed to feature on songs with some of the most popular artists at the time, including Rihanna, Kanye West, Christina Aguilera, Lil Wayne, and Drake. And often, Nicki's features were the most memorable parts of these songs. Nicki's debut album, Pink Friday, came out at the end of 2010. It contained her iconic song Super Bass, which is still popular over 10 years later. Pink Friday also contained Moment for Life, Right Through Me, and Your Love, which were all top 40 singles. Also, shout out to Roman's Revenge. I remember staying up all night one night in middle school just so I can learn all the words to that song. Pink Friday was a great introduction to Nicki Minaj as a solo artist with bigger backing than she'd had in her mixtape era. Not only was Nicki extremely talented, she also filled a gap in the industry as she was pretty much the only mainstream female rapper at the time to have the same level of prominence as her male counterparts. Reviews of Pink Friday were overall positive, with most of the criticisms being that the album was too pop, had too many features, or incorporated too many different sounds. Still, Nicki's lyricism and creativity were praised, and several critics stated it was evident that Nicki would be a pillar in hip-hop for years to come. Nicki and the Grammys is an odd case overall, because if Grammys are genuinely intended to award musical excellence, there's no reason that she doesn't have one. Still, when you look at her Best Rap Album nominations for Pink Friday and Pink Print, it's hard to consider them snubs. Pink Friday lost to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and the Pink Print lost it to Pimp a Butterfly. The sad part is that both of these Nicki albums are definitely deserving of Grammys and likely should have won had they been nominated nearly any other year. Other than that, Nicki's been nominated for Best Rap Performance twice, Best Rap Performance by a Duo, Best Pop Duo or Group Performance, Best Rap Song Collaboration, and Best Rap Song. She also had an Album of the Year nomination for Rihanna's Loud as a featured artist. Looking at who Nicki was nominated against for some of the losses make sense and others are remembered as snubs. In 2015, Anaconda lost Best Rap Song to Kendrick Lamar's I, which has been called a snub. She, Ariana Grande, and Jessie J were also snubbed that year when Bang Bang lost to A Great Big World and Christina Aguilera's song Say Something. The following year, her song only lost Best Rap Song Performance to Kendrick Lamar's These Walls. And I know I'm breaking the rules of my own video by even mentioning this, but if Big Energy was nominated for a Grammy, Super Freaky Girl could have been nominated too. In 2013, Fun won the Grammy for Best New Artist. The year prior, in 2012, they had a massive year thanks to their breakout song, We Are Young, which topped the Hot 100 for 6 consecutive weeks. Their sophomore album, Some Nights, debuted at number 3 and produced other popular songs like Carry On and the title track, Some Nights. Though Fun undoubtedly had a big year in 2012, it's hard to argue their music made as much of an impact as Frank made with his debut album, Channel Orange. Both albums were also nominated for Album of the Year, though neither won. However, Channel Orange's lead single alone, Thinking About You, was an instant classic. In addition, the album is a masterclass in songwriting thanks to its immersive and emotional, yet matter-of-fact lyrics. Several artists, including SZA and Kevin Abstract, have cited Channel Orange as an inspiration for their own songwriting. Aside from its musical merit, Channel Orange is also considered an important work in the LGBTQ+ community, and many queer artists have cited Frank as both a pioneer and inspiration. Though Channel Orange didn't have all the commercial hype and radio play that Fun had with Some Nights, the album still performed well and undoubtedly has had a much bigger impact on music. It's hard to assess the impact of an artist, of course, without the help of hindsight, but I would argue that Channel Orange was a stronger work than Some Nights, even if you take commercial performance out of it entirely. But depending on whether you truly believe in the Best New Artist curse, it might have been for the better that Frank didn't win, but if he had, it definitely would have been well deserved. One of the most egregious snubs in recent Grammy history was when Macklemore and Ryan Lewis won Best New Artist over Kendrick Lamar. Macklemore also took home the Grammy for Best Rap Album for The Heist, which produced 5 platinum singles including Thrift Shop, Same Love, and Can't Hold Us. Thrift Shop went number 1 in the Hot 100, and Billboard named it the top rap and hip-hop song of the 2010s. Thrift Shop also won Grammys for Best Rap Song and Best Rap Performance. Kendrick's sophomore album, Good Kid, Mad City, was also nominated for Best Rap Album, so it of course lost to Macklemore. Good Kid, Mad City is a critically acclaimed work, and Kendrick has been highly praised for its lyricism and its thematic scope. BBC, Complex, and Pitchfork considered it the best album of 2012, and several other publications had it in their year-end lists. Some publications, like Complex, have considered Mad City one of the best rap albums of the last 25 years and one of the best hip-hop albums of all time. Kendrick took his Grammy snub in stride and didn't allow it to discourage him. He followed up Mad City with To Pimp a Butterfly, which received 11 nominations. He said about this, "The Grammy defeats would have been upsetting to me if I'd known that was my best work, if I had nothing new to offer. Good Kid, Mad City is a great work, but it's not my best work. To Pimp a Butterfly is great. I'm talking about the connection the record made. Good Kid, Mad City made a connection, but To Pimp a Butterfly made a bigger connection." To Pimp a Butterfly was also nominated for Album of the Year, but it lost to 1989. Macklemore apologized to Kendrick via text for his wins, saying, "You got robbed. I wanted you to win. You should have. It's weird and it sucks that I robbed you." The Heist and Good Kid, Mad City were also both nominated for Album of the Year, though neither won. However, another album that also lost in that category has been considered the greater snub. Also at the 2014 Grammys, Taylor Swift's Red lost Album of the Year to Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. Random Access Memories produced Get Lucky, one of 2013's biggest songs, and it was Daft Punk's first top 10 single in the States. Get Lucky also won Record of the Year at that year's Grammys. Random Access Memories incorporated funk, R&B, disco, and electronic music to make an album that sounded current, but still pays homage to the music of legends like Nile Rodgers and Giorgio Moroder. Random Access Memories was critically acclaimed and considered one of the duo's best projects. NME included it in their list of the 500 best albums of all time. Pitchfork said about the album, "Though everything about Ram, from the session musicians to the guests to the means of production, is meant to sound more human, the album at points sounds more sterile, almost too perfect. The album is one that celebrates not just the music itself, but the art and process of music making. It brings some of the sounds and conventions from the past into the new millennium, but with a disorienting electronic vibe that's quintessentially Daft Punk." Because of her win for Fearless, Taylor at the time was the youngest Album of the Year winner in Grammy history. Her next album, Red, proved a good enough contender to put her up for the award again. At the time, Red was considered Taylor's magnum opus since this was pre-1989 days. Red contains some of Taylor's most popular songs like 22, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, and I Knew You Were Trouble. The album covers a range of the so-called Red emotions that Taylor felt while making it. Red spent 7 total weeks at number 1, making Taylor the first female artist to have 3 consecutive albums spend more than 6 weeks at this spot. Red was critically acclaimed and considered proof of Taylor's growth musically. She was beginning to experiment more with her music, which is most evident on I Knew You Were Trouble, which capitalized on the dubstep trend at the time. Red is considered a snub not only because of how well it performed at the time, but how well the album has endured. Red made it in the top 10 of several publications' year-end lists, including Billboard, Rolling Stone, Stereo Gum, and Insider, while Random Access Memories didn't crack the top 10 on any of these lists. Another reason that Red's loss is considered a snub is because it laid the foundation for Taylor's even more successful follow-up album, 1989. Red is the album that made Taylor want to veer into a more pop direction, and the seeds are evident in the record. Both Red and Random Access Memories are standouts in their respective artists' discographies. If either had won Album of the Year, it would have been deserved, but for the most part, Red losing Album of the Year is considered a snub and one of Taylor's biggest snubs when it comes to the Grammys. Aside from Kendrick and Macklemore, this is probably one of the other more popular Grammy snubs. At the 2015 ceremony, Beyonce lost Album of the Year to Beck's Morning Phase. In December of 2013, Beyonce dropped her self-titled album with no announcement or promotion, forever changing the music industry. Self-titled is a visual album, and each song is accompanied by a music video to reflect the song's theme. Not only was self-titled critically acclaimed, but it also earned Beyonce some of the best reviews of her career. Self-titled, of course, made it onto just about every year-end list, and like other albums I mentioned, is including on Rolling Stone's list of the best 500 albums of all time. Beck's album Morning Phase was his first in 6 years and was considered a companion piece to his 2002 album Sea Change. He started the project back in 2005, but the majority of the album was recorded in 2013 in just 3 days. Morning Phase debuted at number 3, making it Beck's highest charting album to date. In their review, The Guardian called Morning Phase mellow and compared Beck's voice to watercolor brushstrokes. Several other reviews praised the instrumentation and the introspection on the album. Beyonce and Beck both released strong projects, but the massive popularity of Self-Titled, as well as its iconic release, had many believing it was a shoo-in for Album of the Year. Articles have speculated that Beyonce was hurt by Grammy voters who wanted to vote in a more R&B direction, splitting their votes between Self-Titled and Pharrell's Girl. Voters who preferred a more poppy singer-songwriter album likely split their votes between Sam Smith's In the Lonely Hour and Ed Sheeran's X. You know what? I actually don't know if that's pronounced multiply and not X. Maybe it's multiply. Since Beck's album was pretty much competing in a category of its own, being more folky and rock-inspired, those who wanted to vote for Morning Phase didn't have a similar-sounding one to decide between. Not to say that any of these albums sound the same, but there's some crossover in the genres. Aside from Album of the Year, Morning Phase also earned a Grammy for Best Rock Album. Beyonce's loss to Beck also fueled ongoing claims that Beyonce's music was too urban for the main Grammy categories, and that was why she was never properly awarded. Her previous Album of the Year nomination for I Am Sasha Fierce lost to Taylor Swift's Fearless. Another reason that people justify Beck's win is because he has far less credits on his album than Beyonce. And while having a lot of credits doesn't mean someone doesn't deserve a win, it's hard to overlook how much of a direct hand that Beck had in Morning Phase or his music talents in general. He can play almost any instrument and blends and bends genres in music, from folk to blues to rock and hip-hop. Beck was more active in the 90s, which is why a lot of younger people hadn't heard of him or his musical talents until his win. It was also speculated that his return to music and the narrative surrounding it sort of created an underdog story that contributed to his win. Even Beck himself looked surprised that he won because he, like most people, thought the award was going to Beyonce. While Beck was accepting his award, Kanye West walked on stage. He then shook his hands as if to say he was either playing or thought better of interrupting Beck. In an interview after the ceremony, Kanye said that Beck should have given his Grammy to Beyonce and that he was disrespecting music artistry by keeping it. Kanye has since recanted and said that he feels that Beck deserves his Grammy. At the time, he didn't realize that Beck was a multi-talented artist. Though Beyonce didn't win Album of the Year for Self-Titled, she won Best Surround Sound Album and Best R&B Song and Best R&B Performance for Drunken Love. Self-Titled was also nominated for Best Urban Contemporary Album, but it lost to Girl. Beyonce's next album, Lemonade, didn't fare any better at the Grammys despite her being the most nominated artist that night with 9 nominations. Beyonce released an accompanying film for Lemonade, which told a story of heartbreak, love, and resilience. Lemonade spans several genres from R&B to hip-hop to rock to country. It also includes several features, including The Weeknd, Jack White, and Kendrick Lamar. Billboard called Lemonade a work of revolutionary black feminism, one composed of American Southern, voodoo, and Afrofuturist utopian imagery. Lemonade's lead single, Formation, is best described as a cultural reset. Rolling Stone, Time, and Complex all named it the best song of 2016, and it was Google's most searched song of the year. Beyonce performed it at the 2016 Super Bowl and used the costumes to pay homage to the Black Panther Party. Beyonce performed Sandcastles and Love Draw at the Grammys that year, dressed as an ethereal golden goddess. Her costume drew comparisons to Oshun, the Yoruba goddess of love, beauty, and womanhood. The golden yellow dress she wore in Hold Up also channeled Oshun. Out of the 9 nominations that Lemonade received, it only won 2, with the album itself winning Best Urban Contemporary Album. Formation was nominated for Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best Music Video. It only won Best Video, and its 2 other nominations, especially for Record of the Year, were considered big snubs. In both categories, Formation lost to Adele's Hello. Also, if you were wondering, the Record of the Year Grammy is for the song in its entirety, while Song of the Year awards songwriting. Beyonce also lost Best Pop Solo Performance to Adele. After Lemonade lost in all of the major categories it was nominated in, it revived conversations about whether the Grammys would ever properly award art that centers blackness. A great essay I read called this the glass ceiling of black art, referring to the fact that black art is rarely acknowledged at a prestigious level. And when it is, it typically has to be devoid of all characteristics that make it so-called black art. This could mean mentions of the black experience or work that's in genres created by and mostly associated with black people like rap or hip-hop. Lemonade was full of imagery associated with black and African people throughout several time periods and multiple parts of the diaspora. It's best to sum this whole situation up with a quote from the essay's author, John Villanova. He said, "Making the cut into the nominations for Album of the Year should be perceived as victory enough for artists of color, even if they go on to lose white artists." And of course, he's not saying that as in it's his personal opinion. He's saying that sort of from the Grammys perspective to put that quote more in context. Of course, this conversation is murky territory because an artist's race and the quality of their work aren't always connected and almost never are. But it is a pattern that several black artists take home wins mainly in the urban, hip-hop, rap, and R&B categories, but are historically shut out of the main categories. In addition, urban categories are typically just code word for black, despite the actual genre of the music. In 2022, Jon Batiste took home the award for his album We Are, making him the first black artist to win since Herbie Hancock won back in 2008. Only 11 black artists have ever won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. A black woman hasn't won the award since Lauryn Hill won in 1999. Despite this, Beyonce herself is still the most nominated female at the Grammys and the most awarded female artist at the Grammys. But no matter how impactful she is, it's important to remember that the success of one person, or even just a handful of people, isn't really proof that a problem doesn't exist. At the 2018 awards, SZA went home empty-handed despite being the most nominated female artist that night. She received 5 nominations, including Best New Artist and Best Urban Contemporary Album. SZA received these nominations after the success of her critically acclaimed debut album, Control. The R&B album was praised for its brutally honest songwriting and how the album simultaneously pushed the bounds of R&B and became a textbook example of a great modern R&B album. SZA's angst and perspective on Control was so relatable that it almost felt like a soundtrack to early adulthood. Time ranked Control as the best album of 2017, while Billboard, Days, Pitchfork, and Complex all had it in their top 3. Despite the success and universal acclaim of Control, especially as a debut work, SZA was shut out of her Grammy wins. She lost Best New Artist to Alessia Cara, who had songs under her belt like Here and Scars to Your Beautiful. She lost Best R&B Performance and Best Song to Bruno Mars, who swept at that year's ceremony with 24 Karat Magic. SZA lost her Best Urban and Contemporary Album nomination to The Weeknd's Starboy. In addition, she and Travis Scott lost their Best Rap Sung Performance nomination for Love Galore. They lost to Kendrick Lamar's Loyalty, which featured Rihanna. It makes no sense that an album that received 4 separate nominations across several R&B categories didn't even win once, especially an album as strong as Control. SZA said about this a couple years later, "Once you've been nominated and lost, you're very much free because you're not concerned. I passed that threshold years ago. It's an old energy to me. Why would I be mad?" And to her point, I'm sure several artists stop caring about the Grammys as much after they get snubbed. SZA did go on to win her first Grammy in 2022, winning Best Pop Duo Performance with Doja Cat for Kiss Me More. Her song Good Days was also nominated that year for Best R&B Song, but it lost to Silk Sonic's Leave the Door Open. In 2018, Ed Sheeran took home the Grammy for Best Pop Solo Performance for Shape of You. The song is a cute and upbeat love song that doesn't take itself too seriously. It interpolates TLC's No Scrubs, which is why many people think that the songs sound the same. Shape of You seems like the song that made a lot of people sick of Ed Sheeran. And that's because it was not only inescapable, but it gets stuck in your head pretty easily. Shape of You was the best performing song of 2017 and remained at the #1 spot for 16 weeks. It's also the second most streamed song on Spotify. Despite Shape of You's explosive success, Kesha was considered to have been snubbed for not winning for her song Praying. And while I love Shape of You unabashedly, I can admit Praying is the better song and the better performance. Praying is heartfelt and emotional and is considered one of Kesha's best songs. She shows off her vocal ability in a way that she hadn't done in a lot of her prior music. Kesha said Praying is about healing and having hope that that's something that even the worst people can also do. In an open letter, she said, "I've channeled my feelings of severe hopelessness and depression, I've overcome obstacles, and I have found strength in myself even when it felt out of reach. Praying isn't all about, but of course is heavily inspired by, her assault at the hands of Dr. Luke." Lyrically, the song is just as powerful as Kesha's performance. Praying has become a song that symbolizes overcoming the worst in life, healing, and finding light at the end of the tunnel. Kesha performed Praying live several times, including on her own tour, as well as late-night shows, Ellen, and Good Morning America. Her live performances were praised not only for how emotional they were, but for how well and how consistently Kesha delivered on them. Praying contains an impressive F6 high note, and it became a trend to attempt to hit the note while covering the song. Kesha performed a rendition of Praying at the 2018 Grammys, joined by Cyndi Lauper, Julia Michaels, Bebe Rexha, Camila Cabello, and Andra Day. The performance was considered one of the most powerful and most heartfelt of the night. Truly, from a performance standpoint, Kesha should have won the award. Praying is a lot harder to sing, both technically and emotionally, and was a deviation from a lot of Kesha's prior work. I don't think any of those things are true for Shape of You, no matter how much I love the song. Album of the Year is the most important and typically the most controversial category in every year's Grammy ceremony. So I did want to include a few more wins in that category that were considered snubs and see what you guys think about them, so make sure you comment your thoughts below. In 2001, Steely Dan's 2 Against Nature beat Eminem's The Marshall Mathers LP. In 2011, Arcade Fire's The Suburbs beat Lady Gaga's The Fame Monster and Katy Perry's Teenage Dream. In 2013, Mumford & Sons' Babel beat Frank Ocean's Channel Orange. I have to interject on this one because Channel Orange is a great album, but Babel, in my opinion, was equally strong. In 2016, Taylor Swift's 1989 beat Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. In 2018, Bruno Mars' 24 Karat Magic beat Lorde's Melodrama. And last but not least, this one's not in the Album of the Year category, but in the Best Pop Vocal Album category. In 2019, Ariana Grande's Sweetener beat Taylor Swift's Reputation. So yes, definitely do be sure to let me know your thoughts on all of these down in the comments. I feel like the comment section is going to be interesting on this video. I mean, you guys know that I already don't put that much weight in the Grammys. Like, they're fun to look at, they're fun to talk about, but at the end of the day, Grammys just aren't always indicative of an artist's talent or the quality of their music. And I feel like a lot of the cases that we talked about, even in this video, do sort of speak to that. And you know, at the end of the day, Grammys really aren't everything. And you have to remember that human beings vote on who wins the Grammy and who doesn't. And just like we do, all human beings, including the Grammy voters, have their own preferences and their own biases. And I'm sure aside from that, there's even more going on behind the scenes as to who gets a Grammy and who doesn't, which I will probably investigate in a later video, but we're done with the Grammys for this year. But just remember, yeah, Grammy's an award. It's nice to have, it's cool to be acknowledged, but they're not necessarily, you know, like a weapon or ammo, as a lot of stans like to use them in fandoms, because who gets a Grammy and who doesn't, there's a lot of politics and more stuff behind it than this person is more talented than this person. But yes, that is my Grammy spiel. I probably won't be watching the awards ceremony tomorrow because I haven't watched an awards show since maybe like 2017 because they just don't give anymore. I might watch some clips on the internet once they surface on Monday, but if you ask me anything about the Grammys on Sunday, I won't know, unless it's the red carpet, because I do like to look at the red carpet. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter so that you can keep up with me there, and if you would like to become a channel member, you can click the link in the description of this video. See you dolls so very soon. Bye-bye!